There's one question from one of our live viewers. So, do communities or cities lose their identity?
Uh, I think I think
I think
they
cities are
evolve.
almost like a palimpsest, right?
Hmm.
Go ahead, go
So
ahead.
I mean, the nicest cities I feel like are those with layers, of history that change through time and do not have a singular imagery, inside them. Or so I think it should change, it should grow, and then that makes it richer also.
Yeah, I totally agree. No, the layers or the evolution of cities or communities add to the richness, not or to the value of the place. So I don't think it loses its identity. It somehow changes. It evolves.
Mm. Because cities can die, if they don't evolve and change with the times, they can die. Cities do die.
There are cities like probably we'd say some fakery in a way, like more artificial.
Hmm.
In a sense, there is that evolution of the citizens as well. For example, China. Okay, they develop a very fast-paced growth for cities, and admittedly, for sometimes we would probably say it's quite artificial. And there was a moment of their time that they had the moment of copycats from products to Nikes to the Eiffel Tower or the Le Corbusier Ronchamp. They basically placed that in one of the communities. In a sense, it was an interpretation of saying that they wanted that kind of quality. Sometimes they adhere quality to, let's say, the Western wonders, even Eastern. It doesn't always have to be Western. But I think just like as China would, I would also commend, they have actually also grown and they can actually create, they have actually matured as a city. Yet they also have struggles with homogeneity or, losing again public past edifices. So it's that constant evolution I will say is as mentioned by the panel.
Okay, so another questions. Since you guys were talking about we live and die with cities, so how do you think, architecturally speaking, or in terms of like the built environment, how should humans live and die with cities?
Hirap ng mga question nyo.
Or is there such a
How
thing as
how
we
should
design humans live and die with
uh,
cities? It's from one of our viewers.
I think I digress from that. I don't think I agree with that. I think some people manage to live outside the cities. At least right now, still like 30-40%, right? So it's not like, the cities are not the end all and be all of the human condition. It's just that, of course, humans as social creatures, we tend to congregate, and well, for the vast majority of human history, it's been this constant process of urbanization for the last 6,000 years. But then again, there are periods when civilization and the urban condition fails. Well, for example, the fall of the Roman Empire. Rome was an empire of cities, basically. And so for the longest time, we never got to that level of city building again until maybe I don't know, 19th century or 18th century, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, with regards to that question, living or dying within cities, it's actually relative to the experience of those who live within cities. And when some people have no choice, they'll have to live within the city. They have no choice, and they're not able to. If they wanted to, they would like to live within rural areas, but living within cities is sometimes, for most people or the majority of people, it's not a choice, it's a given, and they have no other option but to stay within cities. Yeah, so
I think lately, Aris, I've been reading some troubling statements on Facebook, about how We should stop people from coming to Manila and all those things.
Yeah.
I feel like, it is not our right to restrict access to our cities
Yeah.
from people from outside.
Yeah.
I feel like, like you said, it's not an option for some people because, of course, they want a better life.
Yeah. Exactly.
So another question is, how do you effectively start a community? So what spaces or structures or infrastructures should you build first
You
to
start with
start a community?
you start with people, not buildings.
Yeah,
That's
do people, make people.
So this was like, I wanna hear your thoughts on this, right? So we're
okay.
building a new city, basically, right?
In
So
Manila, no? In the Manila Bay, tama ba?
yeah, the
Okay.
one of the reclamation projects.
Yeah.
So my thought process was so where how do you build communities? Communities are built on shared experiences and
Mhm.
shared identity. And so our idea was that you build the common ground or the public building or space. You have settlement around it, and then of course they interact, in that common space. Then you fill in the residual space between the settlements, and then you make the identity of a community in terms of like something that is walkable. That's about maybe a radius of like 400 or 500 meters, wherein you have another community with a different identity 400 meters away. And so that way you have this kind of like soft boundary or soft edge that creates an identity, because boundaries allow you to differentiate, and
Mhm.
differentiation, or that creates identity. And so that's really what we're going for right now. Building communities by shared experiences and defined boundaries.
Yeah, I think it's important for, I agree, no? I think it's important for communities to have their own distinction, no? Communities tend, with, of course, with the shared experiences, tend to uh, create or, I mean, slowly, no? Slowly create their identity among themselves. So yeah, I agree that with more, or not necessarily more, but with distinctions, no, you allow communities to identify themselves from others.
I've been on a hyper local trend for the past few years. I've been trying to like
Mhm.
figure out like scale from, gradually how it, goes down to smaller and smaller scales, and then how you aggregate them to create something different. I was talking to Sudar, actually. We were planning to do something like that before. And so I guess we kind of like just did it in this master plan. We were saying that, the reason why, I mean, maybe not the main reason, but like I think one of the reasons why our master plans usually fail, the CLUPs and all that blah blah, every city has their own master plan and they never really succeed, is that it's always top down. And so we were looking at,
Mhm.
maybe like individually, like, the Philippines, we already have this like infrastructure of barangays in place. So what if we actually plan, these barangays like small towns, and then, put them together as an aggregation, or like, create a whole out of it. So it's more like, like it's almost like structuralism, but
Yeah.
where you're building this framework, and then the different, the different elements inside, they can, change and adapt differently. And so and then how the totality forms is with the relationship between these different elements.
Now that you mentioned the barangay, with this pandemic, with this lockdown, I was wondering about how important, or how we can tap really the barangays, no, in monitoring the infected, in providing or giving yung mga food, yung mga relief packs, and even ngayon sa with the restrictions sa schools, no, yung learning hubs. I think one I heard in the news na may isang barangay that activated their barangay as a learning hub. So ang laki nung ay potential sana nung barangay, no, uh, in community living, no, or in managing or organizing community, not only within itself but also in connection
Yeah.
with other barangays. So again, the organization, the systemization is very important.
I feel like it's a tool that we're neglecting kasi, this
Mhm.
political system that we have in place, di ba? Parang, I think it's something very different that might allow us to make, the condition of our mega city more manageable. Because there's
Yeah.
certainly a difference in terms of scale between a metropolis like Metro Manila or Mega Manila even versus like a singular city, right? So maybe that allows us to manage density better if we can, utilize these barangays and barangay
Yeah.
entities.
Yeah, aggregate, no? Kung ma-aggregate natin
Mm-mm.
more effectively. And again, in the context of this pandemic, no, and then with the policies particularly ng IATF, we were hearing sa news na bahala na yung mga LGUs, di ba? Basta mayroon silang general guidelines. I think again, yung interpretation or communication is really important. uh, it is important, for example, if we are to activate this this barangay, I think we should ensure first that they capture the spirit, kumbaga, spirit of the policy of the organization, the spirit of the of the system, eh. So because kahit ma-activate mo sila, it cannot be mechanical lang, eh. No, they have to capture the intention, eh, the spirit of the policy
Actually,
of the
yun
system.
yung gap, Fume. Like from what I
Oh,
see, that's the gap. Eh. We produce white papers and like or guidelines and say this is this and that are correct and right, but then there's no training, and
yeah,
most barangay officials do not have proper training, right? So I
right.
think, and then when you actually, so we try to do something with I think Bataan or something, and the thing is like there's no instrument in place to train the barangay leaders. Like they don't know how to charge it. Like where do they put the like who do they charge? The city, the province, the I mean they don't know where the budget will come from, and it's so small. It's not that
Yeah.
it's too big. It's
Oh,
actually too small that they don't know how to do it. So I think yun yung bitin eh. There's no instrument of training. Like so it becomes like okay, you have policy, then you have the implementer, and then they're not really aligned.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I think yung interpretation from the policy to the implementation is the gap, as you said.
Let me go back to that question about what do we start with when we start to design a city. If you ask me that question, I will I will begin by saying, why do we need to start a new city in the first place? Um, by by simply not starting a new city is much better by working with what we have already and fixing what we already have. uh, would be better, I think, better use of resources of existing places. Because if you consider what happened in history, like when we moved from Manila to Quezon City, now we're trying to move from Quezon City to Clark. Uh, we're repeating the same thing, and we're abandoning places that we could just simply fix. With it won't take more resources to fix what we have, because we have already all the existing things. Yeah, it seems like if we're trying to create new cities, uh, we're giving up on our older cities. Yes, we could create. Let's fix our existing cities first before we move on to another one. Uh, yeah.
Well, like I said, like our goal is really densification. That's really the direction
Yes.
we're going.
Yes. Yes.
And so I really actually hate new cities. Like I don't. It's not that I hate them. I think they're like white elephants. I don't think they work. I mean, history has shown that they don't really work. And so anyway, the one we're building is not a detached city. It's actually closer to Manila than Quezon City, basically.
Yeah.
So we're like we're trying. So this is I have this like thesis in my mind that says, Manila is actually the size roughly the size of Manhattan. And the reason why the other boroughs work is because Manhattan is so built up. And I think the problem there, and I think Paolo told me because of like piling and whatever, but the problem that we have, why we have this like Makati, Ortigas, etc., which are technically suburban in nature, and why we have so much traffic is because we weren't able to build up Manila.
Yeah.
If we had built up Manila, then we would be able to concentrate like business and commerce or whatever in Manila and allow, so like the traffic will not have to cross from one side to the other every day.
Yeah. So go for it. Go for it, Will. Densify Manila. Will densify
We'll see.
Baguio.
The problem with master planning is that you basically don't see it until you retire.
Yeah.
So I'd rather be an architect pa rin talaga.